a couple of things, a couple of side notes. Well, first of all, before we get into the labor negotiations, there has been a monumental move made by the New York Mets, and that was hiring Elizabeth Benn to be their director of Major League Operations. She becomes the highest-ranking woman baseball ops employee in Mets franchise history. Of course, Kim Ang, of course, the first female GM of the Miami Marlins. But she worked for the Major League Baseball front office in youth programs, labor relations, and since 2020 in baseball ops. She is University of Toronto and Columbia University graduate and actually plays baseball in the New York City Metro Baseball League. I believe that's an amateur league. She's the first woman to play in that. So she will join a baseball operations hierarchy that includes GM Billy Epler and assistant GMs Bryn Alderson, Ian Levin, and Ben Zausner. So Ben's hire makes her the highest ranking among the women that actually the Mets do have other women in the baseball ops department, and as such, she's a part of a greater women's movement across Major League Baseball. So that is the good headline.
Yeah, I wish she didn't do a lot right this week, but I think that was definitely one of them.
That is a nice one.
Yeah, a lot of talent, and especially her having a great mind. Obviously, too, having experience playing baseball, still, to this day, it may not be at the Major League level, but still, just having that mindset is definitely something necessary, especially for this Mets team, which God bless them. But I feel like a lot of the time watching them, they have no one upstairs where they have a bunch of administrators, a bunch of directors that have no clue what they're doing. So it's nice to actually see people who have a clue about baseball. You would think, maybe not with the negotiations going on right now, but
okay. So 7 consecutive days of negotiations and no deal yet, but apparently, some progress was made. Officials from both sides met on 5 separate occasions over the course of 6+ hours on Sunday. Meetings one league source called productive. No other specifics from the meetings were available. The parties will reconvene tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time to continue bargaining, leaving them one final day to make a deal before the league's deadline arrives. MLB has instituted a Monday deadline for a deal in order for the regular season to open on time, as scheduled on March 31st. Earlier this month, Rob Manfred said that was based on injury data and the experience of the 2020 pandemic-shortened season. Spring training needs to be at least 4 weeks long in order for players to properly prepare. Now, that's one thing that I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, that they came to that decision, and I thought they were going to come up with the opposite because they had short spring trainings the past couple of years, but instead they decided that, you need a full month.
I think the advantage for the full month is it gives you an opportunity to look at some of those minor leaguers who can get a real shot at making one of these major league teams. Well, I think it's a disadvantage when they have those short preseasons.
Well, the other problem is what minor leaguers are going to be left, because we all know what's been happening with minor league baseball teams. They're being killed off, and where is the talent? I mean, is baseball basically saying they're going to be relying on colleges to supply talent?
It sure feels that way because, again, the union, MLBPA, they're advocating for better compensation for players with no service time to 3 years, a more competitive balance, and really an end to service time manipulation that we've seen a lot of these teams exploit. And it's a shame because it really feels like, to me, the league wants less and less. Obviously, want less and less of that to try to save money, even though it's a detriment to the talent we're going to be seeing on the field. They want to save that money, and as you said, it feels like they're really relying heavily more on the college game, even though, as we said, with how young those guys are and how long it takes for guys right out of college to develop, it's going to be a detriment to the sport, and it's really disgusting that that's the angle the owners want to take, in these debates in trying to get this new deal done, and they really haven't been working on anything else. And it's just amazing at how little I think they've accomplished over the last 3 months.
Well, the other thing, too, is that the colleges don't prepare you for the level. First of all, minor league baseball on the professional level and even in A-ball is a cut above college, mainly because there are a lot more college teams out there, and you've got strong conferences, you got weak conferences, but even guys coming out of the power conferences don't necessarily have the seasoning they need to move up through the system. They start out in rookie or A ball just like everybody else. Some move through faster than others, but the bottom line is they still have to do it. It is one of Major League Baseball is unique among the sports where it is rare for a player to go straight out of high school or college and into the majors. I mean, yes, you have your odd Kobe Bryant or LeBron James in the NBA. You have guys who skip a year or two for the NFL and the NBA, but college to the pros or to MLB is still exceedingly rare. You usually have to do some kind of time in the minors before they call you up.
Yeah, I think that the developmental process is such like an essential piece, right, of Major League Baseball, and then having that opportunity to develop as a player is a necessity, really, for these guys. I was just wondering, are Major League or owners feel like they're starting to feel the pinch of some of these minor league teams being what families are turning to bring their children to games? Like I'm going to go to a Ducks game before I'm going to go to a Yankees game or a Met game because it's cheaper for me to do so. It's easier for me to get in and out. It's more family friendly for me to do so. And if they can eliminate some of these teams, it'll bring those game day revenues back to their pocket.
I don't see that simply because, well, first of all, how much revenue for when a ticket costs a fraction of what a major league ticket costs? Number one, and as you said, it's far enough out on the island where you're making quite a long trip to either the Bronx or Flushing. So I never thought. Maybe somebody will say it does. I can't see it. And also, the ballpark at Islip is so much a fraction of the size of Citi Field or Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
A lot of people do both because you go to a lot more the Ducks games than you can Major League games. But they will do a couple of Major League games a year, but maybe do a dozen Ducks games. So,
right. Me neither. To me, the situation I feel like is just that they don't care. They don't care for the minor leagues. I think they want it gone just so they could, besides having that potentially bigger pool available, they could obviously control what the market is for a player. So because you're not allowing, as you said, those young minor leaguers to establish themselves and really stand out, you're allowed to pay them less because you don't know how much talent they're bringing, as opposed to the opportunities they get, playing AA ball, AAA ball.
Well, first of all, they get paid jack. We know that. One of the things that they're negotiating right now in the major league contract is minimum salary, because if they're getting up to $700K, they're not going to do it for $800K minimum. Okay, so if you get called up and spend 2 weeks, you've doubled your income for the year. It's amazing.
Now, how can you brought up the manipulation of years of service? How are teams able to do that? How do they manipulate that? Because I was reading on that today as well too, Matt. To your point, what you're bringing up, that being brought up and stuff, and I didn't understand necessarily how you can manipulate those years of service.
I think they have to be consecutive. I don't remember the rule off the top of my head. I'll save it for next week, how that works. But yeah, if you go above or beyond a certain threshold, or let's say, for example, if you're a rookie and you spend a certain amount of time with the team, you get a full year of service. And if you spend 1 day less, it's a fraction of it.
Yeah, for you to have a year of service time, you have to play 172 days. And the single baseball season itself lasts 187. This is including off days and other things like that.
Which means you bring them up a little late.
Right, exactly. You just hold them for that extra day, that 16th day, that prospect. They won't be able to get that 6-year service time until really their first day of their 7th season. So you're essentially getting an extra year of action, for that prospect, despite him already playing almost an entire season. And we've seen this happen. We even saw it recently, I think, with Jarred Kelenic. He was traded to the Mariners, and they did that to where he played He played. He was held for those 15 days, and he played. He didn't get to play enough games to get a full year of service.
Yeah.
So when they're talking
Yankees
about
like too.
Really usable players, right? So like these are usable players. Then there's somebody you're going to play regularly.
The whole point is to delay their eligibility for free agency and delay their eligibility for arbitration. Because
you get them on the cheap.
Even George said it way back in the day that, when I hold the hammer, I hold the hammer, and when you hold the hammer, you hold the hammer. And with the first few years before free agency, he holds the hammer. So he's not necessarily going to give him too much extra. Now, some teams, like the Cleveland Indians in the late 1980s, when they started to turn things around, they figured that signing guys for more than they were worth early on in their careers and getting them to multi-year deals meant that they would be able to, one, keep guys longer, and two, be able to get more service out of them before you have to deal them or come up with a bigger contract. So fortunately, the team got better enough so that their revenues went up, and they got the new ballpark, Jacobs Field, Progressive Field, whatever you call it, and then the Indians became consistent contenders. But especially through the 90s. I mean, they were always in the Yankees' way. But the whole point still is that that's how they were able to do it, because they didn't have any money. I mean, they were dirt poor. Remember the movie Major League? There's a lot of truth to it. I mean, yes, they had a lot of tropes there with the wife of the owner taking over, like Georgia Frontiere did with the Rams, and they kind of add a little bit of comedy to it. But the state of the Cleveland Indians franchise at that time, in the mid to late 1980s, was, dead in the water. That part they got right. But that's how they were able to turn things around. And other smaller market teams started doing that. And the smaller market teams are the ones who are saying, let us keep guys longer so we can keep a team together longer. And then when they go their separate ways, now fortunately, the longer you keep them, the longer you have them for their prime, and when they do go for their big free agent contract, they end up, signing for too long and, being overpaid at the age of 40. Yeah,
and we're seeing that locally as well. Guys like Clint Frazier, Gio Urshela, Don Smith, or some of those guys, impacted by that.
Because the Yankees have been playing devil may care. They don't really worry. Yes, they do try to control as much as they can, but they would much rather win. I mean, look, that's what we love about the Yankees.
And as you said, it's why you see these deals which could blow up in your face, like we saw with Albert Pujols going to the Angels and then the Dodgers. He as good as a first tenure run he had, I think he deserved the money. Obviously, he didn't live up to the contract.
The Cardinals got his best years. There's no doubt about that.
Exactly. And we're seeing it too. Over the past couple of seasons with these great players signing these mega $1 million contracts. Tatis last year, Trout a couple seasons ago.
But that's the idea. Keep them longer.
Freeman's the next big name, assuming when this lockout's done, if it's ever done.
Well, what about Aaron Judge? Now, Aaron Judge, we've talked about this before, but Aaron Judge has been milking one good year for his whole career. It wasn't bad, last year, but
I'd say 2 years.
But the bottom line is that he's had injuries, and if you sign him long term with his pattern of injuries, are you getting full value for the money? First, of course, the flip side of the coin is who else is out there that could replace him? Do you have anybody in the pipeline that could do it, or do you have anybody out there you can get for less money? The answer to both those right now is no. But that could change in 6 months.
And I was going to say, the closest thing to me would be, their big prospect in Jason Dominguez, but he's only 20. And as I said, we're talking about this arbitration and service manipulation. I don't think they'd want him on the roster for a couple years because, as I said, once he turns 26, if he, plays at a level above Judge, then he's going to be a huge asking price come 2028. So, that's definitely something that's, in the Yankee organization mindset. And again, it's a big shame of it all, to where this is what baseball has become. It's, should we call up this really good player now to replace this other good player? Nah, because if we do that, then we're not going to have him for
Way
as
back
long,
when,
and we won't be able to underpay him for as long.
in the 1950s, there was this phenomenon called the bonus baby. Before there was a draft, you send your scouts out everywhere, and they come up with this top prospect, and they'd sign him to a sizable bonus for the time, and that way they'd lock him down before anybody else could get a chance at him. Well, Major League Baseball's front office decided, hey, that means the Yankees can spend as much money as they want on these bonus babies, and the Baltimore Orioles can't. Well, we're going to level the playing field a little bit. Dodgers, we're going to say that you sign a bonus baby, you got to bring him up to the Major League team. And long before he's ready to go. That's what happened with Sandy Koufax. Sandy Koufax's first 5 years should have been in the minors. But because he was a bonus baby, he went straight to the Brooklyn Dodger team and followed them on the move to L.A., but he didn't really start to hit his stride until 61 or so. But he came up in 56. So and he got knocked around because he was wild. I mean, he had great fastball and stuff like that, but he didn't really, settle into his repertoire. But from 61 to 66, he was the greatest pitcher ever. He was the greatest left-hander ever. He was 4 no-hitters.
And we're only discussing 1 or 2 issues.
One of those a perfect game.
Slew of issues, they're debating, like potential expanded playoffs. The players don't want it. The league wants to add a couple more. There's a bunch of wacky ideas going out. One of them, I think the players suggested this, was you have a 12-team format, but the 2 bottom teams play a best 2 out of 3 wild card, where it's, one team has a ghost win. So let's take the Braves and the Phillies this year, right? The Braves had the better record, so they have 1 win at hand, and if they win another one, then they're in.
Just play 2 out of 3, please.
It's just absurd, and I don't know why I still hold out, because let's just be real. There's not going to be a deal tomorrow. There's so much to go. A long way to go is what Ken Rosenthal reported.
But the dumb thing about it is that they're going back and forth over small amounts of money, or small percentages. I mean, it's getting patently ridiculous. I mean, look, the previous lockouts, the lockouts that happened in the NHL and NBA, they wanted to roll back the players' share of the revenues because because they felt their overhead was too high and the players were getting too big a piece of the pie. And the pie was big enough so the players weren't going to feel much of it anyway. And the NBA did it twice and won both times. NHL did it twice as well. But, that did cost them 1 season that I don't think they've ever really recovered from. But still.
Ironically, they may recover if MLB doesn't play their season.
Yeah. Well, MLB will play their season. The question is, when will they hash out this stuff? Because this does not have the acrimony of the 1994 strike or even the acrimony of the 2002 labor negotiations, which were finally hashed out. They were doing this in August, and the players are about to go on strike. I remember spending 27 hours in front of 245 Park Avenue covering that stupid thing because that's where MLB's baseball offices are, not MLB.com. It's MLB, main MLB. And the Players Association is just around the corner. And the negotiators of both sides, Fear and Orza on the players' side, Bob Dupay and Rob Manfred on the other, and they would walk back and forth. And a friend of mine would be there with his cell phone and calling me, Fear and Orza are coming this way. So I'd get up, and the news camera people, the TV camera people figured out what we were doing. So every time I got up, a whole bunch of people followed me.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's interesting. I had read about the 14-team playoff as well too. That seemed like just so bizarre to me to have that many teams kind of thrown into the mix.
I'll say this, right? As a Mets fan, it'd probably be great because of how many times they've just missed out on the playoffs. Like, I think of was it 07, 08? It'd be great because they'd actually be able to be in it for once. But Yeah, I just we have the whole March to October, and especially at the end of the season, it's so exciting seeing
I
these
don't
teams
want to add
battle it
more.
out.
I mean, if you want to add a 2 out of 3 opening round of the playoffs, I'll take that. I don't like the wild card game one bit. And you want to know
Right.
something? Look at last year's postseason as a perfect example. The
Yeah.
Yankees and Red Sox basically finished with the same record. Red Sox won that day. Okay, although in a 2 out of 3, definitely not a given. Still could have gone their way, but the Yankees would have had more of a fighting chance.
Mhm.
And look at the Atlanta Braves, a team that was better than neither of those two, ending up winning it all. Look, in
I agree.
college
You need less
baseball,
teams. You don't need more
I mean,
teams.
Yeah.
well, they're running, and the Rays too, they're running bullpens out in playoff games. That you don't see unless you're in the college NCAA college playoffs when you're one going against a 4 in the regional.
Right.
Like that had been done to Stony Brook a couple of times, and Stony Brook made them pay. But not in Major League Baseball and not among playoff teams. I
Yeah.
said, I think Fried was the only pitcher on this world champion Braves team that had any shot of being in the rotation of the 95 team that also won the World Series.
And he got hurt, so
Yeah.
They won that title with no
Who had
starting pitchers, I think.
any right to be in the same
Charlie Morton,
rotation
I
as
think.
Maddox, Smoltz, Glavine.
Right.
Yeah, but I think you're comparing them to one of the best pitching staffs of all time,
Right.
When
But they
you
both
start
won
throwing those out
rings. They both won
Right.
rings, and don't mean a thing if you ain't got that ring. And
there. That ring, yeah.
not so great teams have won rings. And again, another great argument. 1998, perfect example. I'm in the radio room, a bunch of us post game. I got into an argument with Susan Waldman of all people because I said if the Yankees don't win the World Series this season, it means nothing. They said, "How could you say that?" I said, "Because 24 other teams won the World Series and they wouldn't have." And the next day, Joe Torre says, "This season doesn't mean anything unless we win it all." And I look at her and say, "See." But
Yeah.
Now, Ken,
That-
you don't think the negotiation is going to go through then?
I hold out hope. I hold out hope and say yes. Realistically, no. Just with the owners, just really, it goes beyond just the deadline and more so just how they've been this entire off season, where they haven't budged at all from their original negotiations. They're basically saying my way or the highway, and we've seen the players almost bend backwards trying to get some sort of compromise to go on and lower their demands, and the owners haven't budged. So to me, it's just I don't see it happening. Maybe I feel like we're definitely going to lose games. If it's only a couple, then all right. But if you lose another half season, right, then again, how legitimate is this World Series going to be? What's really the reason for fans to keep supporting the game when it's pretty evident, and it really goes in all sports, but really evident at least in baseball, owners really do not care about the fans, the players, really anything other than what's in their pockets. It's not a surprise, but it's more so just reinforcing that fact to the public.
And I also think how transparent right now the owners and the like Manfred are. There's it's just out there. Like you can't even. The commissioners now are such talking heads, or just taking their marching orders from the owners now. So and
it was Teal, Goodell,
is,
Bettman. Yeah, I think Silver. I think he's creative enough where he puts his own voice to it, and I think you could see him speak. You see like a press conference for him, and think, yeah, he sure owners, but I think he understands where the players are coming from.
Well, there is one thing. First of all, I always go back, and of course, this is our last broadcast of Black History Month, to an interview I did with Buck O'Neill talking about how Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, and he always started off with, first of all, Landis died. And Kennesaw Mountain Landis was an absolute monarch of baseball, and he was hired to be that. No one was ever going to fire him. He was going to fire them, okay? And since then, Bowie Kuhn, I think, was pretty powerful. Maybe Fay Vincent tried to be, but they ran him out of there. So Seelig was an owner himself and had to divest himself of the team, gave it to his daughter, who now runs it. But the whole point remains, though, is that the commissioner is no longer a commissioner. The commissioner is representing the owner, and that's the same thing that's happened in all the major sports. David Stern was probably the last commissioner who was an absolute czar. Okay? The other ones answer to the owners. In the NBA, the owners answered to David Stern. But that's the way things are right now. Could that happen again? Depends. Rozelle was that way with the NFL, and he was God, and the owners answered to him. But the reason why is because he made the money. He proved himself that he was acting in the interest of the league, and they should probably listen to him. Manfred has not done that, at least not in my point of view.